Here we go. Live on Instagram, live on YouTube. Says go live. Come on. Go live. Here we go. Oh, I'm going to bear you guys all what I totally had in my head as I was getting ready to start this. I was just thinking of the song from NSYNC, Here We Go. And I was like, totally going to be like, that needs to be my intro song. Here we go. One more time, everybody. Yeah, I'm not going to start singing, but I just started singing because I wanted to. Happy Tuesday, y'all. I'm excited to get talking about today's topic. It's one that comes up a lot. And as always, I am now streaming this live on Instagram and on YouTube. I usually just stream it live on YouTube. So if y'all have questions that you want me to answer, I will answer your questions. Just you're going to have to stay on because once I get rolling with what I'm talking about, I'm going to go back and look at those things. So I'm going to try and keep my eyes on things, but it's always hard because once I'm getting into a topic, it's especially today's topic, because it's one that hits home to me in my own fitness journey. And I'm going to kind of start off with that to kind of hopefully get you guys to understand why I do what I do and the way that I do it. Okay. So growing up for me, nutrition wasn't really a big focus in terms of like what we were eating. However, I was exposed to diet culture. Sorry, my cat just jumped up on my counter because it's almost time for him to eat, talking about food. I was exposed to diet culture at a young age because my family was all overweight. My mom's sisters were all overweight. My mom was overweight. And it wasn't that they didn't ever push their strategies on me, but I did watch, my mom doing Weight Watchers and counting points. My dad did Atkins at one point. I had an aunt that I know, like looking back at it, had a serious eating disorder. Like she was like eating hardly anything and like running a bunch, like looking back at it now. And I wanted to like look just like her. And just like looking at all of the things that I was exposed to growing up as a kid, but I was also exposed to a family that was very overweight. And, like I said, we didn't eat very healthy. When I say healthy, I mean, we did eat a lot at home, but we also ate a lot of convenience food. And my diet, honestly, was like Pop-Tarts for breakfast. I would maybe eat lunch at school, but it was usually like a cinnamon roll or like one of those freaking, if you're old enough like me, you remember those freaking pizzas. It was just definitely not healthy stuff. And then like after school, I would like polish off whatever like leftovers we had, or I would have like a freaking whole box of macaroni and cheese. And then dinner was like whatever we were cooking. It was like spaghetti and meatballs or grilled cheese, or, it was just very, very like honestly just standard American diet. And I was active, so I was able to get away with it. But I did start to put on weight. And, in college, I put on a lot of weight, and I was eating out a lot. I was drinking, and like my diet wasn't any better. And when I first decided to start changing my nutrition, it was mostly like, I need to clean up my diet. I need to just stop eating some of this processed shit. And that's what I did. I kind of went all in on like, like learning how to eat healthier. And then as things had started to plateau, I learned about calories, and that kind of was how I started things. So I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a backstory because and that's just part of the story, because my journey has not been linear. There's been a lot of ups and downs in it. And I'm going into my 40th year this year. And it's really cool to feel like I think I finally have everything kind of put together in a place where 40 years into my life, halfway into my life, I think I finally understand how to honestly just live in a body that I can be healthy and happy and confident in. I know this isn't what the topic is today, but it just kind of laid the backstory a little bit for y'all to know that I didn't always just have a healthy diet. I didn't always have the discipline that I have with nutrition. And honestly, don't even think of my nutrition like it's something that I had to be disciplined with anymore. That was not something that was always there for me. I had dessert every night, brownies, whatever it was. So, but today's topic, we're talking about clean eating versus calories, macros, and all that kinds of stuff. And if you're watching, as always, I got my coffee. Today's flavor of the day is Italian wedding cake. So I did my routine. Cami, I knew you were asking about this. I did my routine trip to TJ Maxx this past Sunday, and that's usually when I stock up. I see whatever flavors they have in, and I'm pretty simple, but I was like, you know what, let me try this one. I don't know that I'd get it again, but it's okay. I can handle it today. My favorite is definitely some of their seasonal ones. The sugar cookie flavor, they have a really good peppermint bark one, but it's not Christmas season anymore. So let's talk a little bit about clean eating, macros, calories, and all that stuff, and where you're at in your journey, okay? So let's start off by identifying what clean eating actually is. And I love making like the joke of like, you can't really clean your food. Like, clean eating is like what? You're going to grab some Lysol and start cleaning your food. But what it really means is that you're just focusing on more natural foods that are like naturally found in Earth, like on Earth. So it's like thinking of things like animal based proteins or dairy products that come straight from the cow or the goat or whatever it is. You're looking at carbohydrate sources that come from the earth, your root vegetables, your fruits, and your vegetables. You're looking at natural fats, things that come naturally from the meat you're ingesting, or from things like nuts and seeds and oils from those things, avocado, coconut. Essentially, clean eating is focusing on a diet based around whole foods. And when I say whole foods, I want to use the term natural foods. In fact, I'm not even going to use the word whole foods anymore because let's be honest, I can have a whole cookie and that's a whole food, right? I can have a whole cake and that's a whole food, right? But I'm really talking about natural foods that you can naturally find in earth. And before we had so much technology and industrialization and things that made making more hyper palatable foods more obviously easy to access. So why is it important for us to focus on food quality? Okay, so food quality is really, really, really important. So if you are a clean eater and that's your jam, like kudos to you. You're doing the right thing. In fact, as I mentioned, the first thing I did with my diet was like, I got to start eating better quality food. So you're getting more nutrients. Nutrients, we're going to go into macros, isn't just macros, it's also micronutrients. And we need little doses of micronutrients, but we need micronutrients. In fact, people are like, hey, should I be drinking electrolytes? Well, if you're eating enough fruits and vegetables, you're getting plenty of electrolytes. It's things like this that people don't realize. Electrolyte supplements are a supplement, okay? So we should be able to get them from our diet. But that's just one example. Your hormones also require nutrients. In fact, a lot of my women that are dealing with issues with estrogen dominance or having issues with perimenopause and menopause, when I look back at their diet, I'm like, you're not getting any cruciferous vegetables in. You're not getting any fiber. Like we need to be increasing our nutrient intake. Even our protein sources, if you're getting it from, animal sources, you're getting more bioavailable sources of protein. You're going to and some of those proteins are easier for your body to digest. So we want to look at all of that stuff as well. So we want to have a lot of nutrients. We want to look at satiety. Okay, so actually feeling full. When you are eating a cleaner diet, okay, and you eat more clean foods, you can eat more volume for less calories for the most part. We're going to talk about some instances where this is not the case. But for the most part, when you're focusing on mostly, I'm going to even call it more like the paleo diet, like meat and vegetables, you're going to be eating foods that are going to make you feel more satiated, So that's one of the things that happens. And the other thing is you're getting less exposure to possible toxins. And I say less exposure because it's really hard to avoid toxin exposure, not just in our food, but everywhere in life. Like you walk outside, you're exposed to a bunch of toxins, but everything we have is like in plastics now. And people can get really focused on like food additives and stuff like that. But if you're eating mostly whole foods, you're getting a minimum dose of any kind of possible toxin. So the more whole foods we're eating, obviously, the healthier we're going to be because we're getting more nutrients, more satiety, and all that stuff. There are a couple of things that can go wrong when we are focusing only on clean eating, and that's where calories and macronutrients play a part. Okay, so the first thing we have to talk about is calories. All right. So our calorie intake is essentially it's our energy balance. Okay. So our calorie intake balance with our calorie output. So calories are just energy, units of energy. How many calories am I burning a day? My energy output. How many calories am I taking in a day? My calorie input is going to tell me or is going to dictate whether I am maintaining, I am losing, or I am gaining weight. Okay. But chronic underfeeding, not getting in enough calories, can also cause some problems with hormones and other things that also might make it hard for you to be healthy because now we're impacting our metabolic rate. It's going to make it harder for you to perform the way that you want to in the gym and in life because your body's not going to want to use energy the right way. So, and then overfeeding the body, obviously, is going to cause excess body fat. Excess body fat can lead to problems with estrogen dominance and other hormone problems, insulin resistance and stuff and all that. But this comes from calories. Okay. So even if you're listening to this and maybe you were maybe this is bringing up thoughts for you about like, oh, what about carbohydrates and insulin? Okay. I want you guys to realize that calories and your body fat percentage are the biggest thing that indicate things like insulin resistance, hormone imbalance, and stuff like that. It's not necessarily a food or a macro. Okay. So now we're going to go into macros. You've got 3 macronutrients. You've got protein. Everybody talks about their protein. Got to get your protein. You cannot go wrong getting enough protein. Okay. In fact, if you're over on your protein, kudos to you. You're eating more than you need, but I'd rather you be eating too much protein than not enough. Okay. So protein is important for maintaining and building lean muscle mass, but it's also important for a lot of other hormonal and immune system, functions and things like that. Hair, skin, and nails. So women that are like, God, my hair is so brittle and dry and it's breaking. Like, are you getting enough protein? All right. So are we getting enough protein in? Carbohydrates often get the bad rap. Okay. But carbohydrates are a large source of nutrients if we are eating whole foods, and also are your body's primary source of energy. Okay. So it's funny. I was thinking about this. So many people worry about eating too many carbs. And I'm like, can I get in enough carbs to get my body to perform the way that I want it to? Like it's such a flip when you realize that carbs are not the enemy. Okay. So carbohydrates are important. They're also a source of fiber, which again is really important for gut motility, digestion, keeping your gut healthy. If your gut is not healthy, nutrient absorption goes down. So we want to make sure that we are keeping our gut moving the right way. And then our last macro is fat. Okay, fat is important for hormone function, nutrient absorption. A lot of our vitamins can't be absorbed without fat, cellular function, and honestly, obviously, flavor. Everything tastes better with butter, right? Like, I mean, everybody loves a good steak. Like there's parts of the fat is what makes fat's what makes baked goods so good. Try using something to supplement butter or oil in a baked good and it tastes very different. It's not as satisfying. Okay. So fat is important for all of those things. So I want to talk about 2 different problems I see when we're focusing on just clean eating and when we're just focusing on the calories and the macros. And I'm going to kind of give you like the 2 schools of thoughts. Okay, the clean eating thoughts are like, I don't have to worry about calories as long as I'm like, eating clean, it doesn't really matter. Well, in the beginning, this might really help you because if we're switching out Doritos for, something like an apple or cookies or something like an apple, we're going to be decreasing our calorie intake from those foods. It's going to make fat loss a lot easier and we're going to be getting more nutrients. In fact, I have a couple of examples here. So if you're watching, okay. So here I have oh my God, I used to eat these as a kid. These are grandma's peanut butter cookies. Do you know that 1 package of these is 2 servings and 1 serving is 180 calories. So this small ass little package of cookies has 370 calories, 18 grams of fat, and 47 grams of protein. I'm sorry, 18 grams of fat and 47 grams of carbs in this little ass thing, okay? I'm not even going to talk about sugar because we'll save that for a whole nother episode. I think I'm going to talk about sugar in another episode too. I've done one before, but we need to. Okay, so this package is 370 calories. This apple is maybe 80 calories. So if I'm taking this and I'm switching it with an apple, I'm literally decreasing about 300 calories from my diet, right? So simple fixes are going to make calorie control easier. And in the beginning, you might not have to worry about that. But one of the problems that happens is if I'm only focusing on clean eating, but I'm not focusing on the balance of my calories and macros, I might be under eating nutrients. So if I'm not prioritizing getting enough protein, this is common when a lot of people do more like a raw, vegan-based clean diet, and they don't know how to get their protein sources in, and they're not really focusing on that. That's really important for you guys to understand. Or if you are, the other problem that lies with this is, let's just say that you are going the high fat route, which is where a lot of people go. They go towards the keto route. I'm eating nothing but natural fats. In fact, I had a conversation with a new client about this who'd been stuck with the same body composition. And she had been telling me how she eats so clean. She doesn't eat anything processed, doesn't eat any sugar. She eats all natural fats. And her fat intake was like almost 200. That's 1,800 calories from straight up fat, which I didn't even mention that. But here's an example. Okay, so another example I have here, if you're watching, I got a package of Doritos. This package of Doritos has about 150 calories, okay? This right here, this little container is, if I could count them, We got, well, let me just show you. It fits into my hand, okay? I've got one handful of macadamia nuts, okay? One handful. This handful of macadamia nuts is more calories than this pack of Doritos, okay? So somebody that's like, I'm trying to lose weight, and they're like, I'm going to switch out my Doritos and I'm going to eat natural foods, and they swap it out for the nuts, they're not really helping themselves with their fat loss goals. So do you see here where it can be good in the beginning if you're focusing on eating higher quality foods, but there can be some flaws if you're not focusing on the macronutrient distribution of those and looking at overall calorie intake, okay? Vice versa, if you are in the if it fits your macros category, and I get this a lot, and this is one of the things I troubleshoot, is people are like, I think that my macros are off. And I'm like, well, maybe it's not your macros, maybe it's your food quality. If you're only eating shit like this, okay, this types of stuff is way more absorbed calorie-wise than things like this and this, because there is something called the thermic effect of feeding. And I will tell you this, I often find that people that focus on a very clean diet require a lot more calories because their food is so clean. In fact, I have a client that I actually want to do a case study on her. She eats no packaged foods, and she's eating about, I think her maintenance calories are around 2,500. And she's not that active. She only works out like maybe for an hour, 5 days a week, CrossFit class. She walks about 8,000 steps a day, but nothing crazy. Like, she's not doing anything crazy. But I think her calorie requirements are so high because she has such a high calorie or a high quality diet. So you can't just do this. And also, I'm going to go over some other flaws of this kinds of stuff. Okay, so the second piece to talk about here is when you're focusing on clean eating, you're maybe not really tracking anything. So you have no idea. You're kind of guessing at what's working. And in the beginning, it's okay, because when you're just making the swaps from the grandma's cookies to the apple, you don't really have to track that you're changing 300 calories from your diet, right? But over time, you're going to hit a plateau. That's what happened to me, as I talked about. And that's when it's time to start focusing on, okay, how much am I actually eating? And you can do them both simultaneously. If you're listening to this and you're just getting started, I would actually recommend that, because I think the other problem is that people go right into fat loss when they start focusing on quantities or macros and stuff like that, and they don't even know what it looks like to optimize at maintenance. Okay, so we want to start to talk about getting dialed in with both. So in my opinion, all right, it's not really a this versus that. It's not clean eating versus macros. They both work together. It's just knowing where you're at in your journey and when to apply a more dialed in, trackable approach. You can dial in and take a trackable approach from day one. That's going to get you the fastest results, but it's also okay to be like, I got to focus on one thing at a time. And I would focus on one or the other. Regardless, I think that focusing on food quality should come first, because what I'm going to talk about now is the exit. All right. Unless you plan to be a macro tracker for the rest of your life, you are going to need to make sure that you understand good food quality, because if you're focusing on good food quality, it's a lot easier to maintain your weight without having to track. Okay. As I said, this kinds of stuff, very easy to overconsume. Very easy to overconsume, too many calories from. Okay. I could easily smash these 2 cookies and be fine. Okay. So when you're focusing on mostly whole foods, after you've used macro tracking to get to where you want to be, you could hopefully move away from tracking, but your food stays the same. No matter where you're at in your journey, your nutrition, the food you're consuming, shouldn't change. What's going to change is the quantities and maybe the macronutrient balance of those things based on your specific goals. And hopefully that makes sense. And that's why I personally don't think that macros is the right thing in the beginning. I think that focusing on food quality is the right thing in the beginning. And I think that keeping a food diary is the next thing in the steps, because that now gives you awareness on where am I at with calories and macros. You don't even have to get into macros, you just keep track of things. So hopefully that makes sense a little bit there. All right. So now, if you guys are kind of struggling with knowing where you're at and where you want to be, I would say that the first thing that you should do is to take a look at your overall. Let me take a step back. The other thing that I really love, because I want to make sure I'm covering this the right way. The other thing that I really love about getting into calories and macros, and I know I mentioned sugar, is so many people have beliefs about food. Okay, so for instance, if I'm eating the grandma's cookies instead of the apple, I am suddenly being bad. Or if I'm choosing the nuts over the grandma's cookies, suddenly I'm being good. And this really isn't the truth. Okay. I want you to understand that these whole natural foods are going to provide you more nutrients. And what I fully believe in is diet flexibility. Okay. So 80% of your diet should be primarily natural foods, right? So we're getting in a lot of high fiber grains, we're getting in a lot of lean proteins, we're getting in a lot of natural fats. We're looking at all of these things and making sure that we're getting enough of them in our diet. The other 20% can be whatever the hell you want. I add a little bit of whipped cream to my coffee every day. I have dessert 2 or 3 times a week, so every once in a while I'll throw in something like pizza. Like, that's the 20%. Some people have things on a daily basis in a little bit. Okay. But you want to think of those things as like, they're kind of like condiments on your food, but it's condiments on your day. All right. So we want to make sure that we're sprinkling those things in. And if you're somebody who has struggled to feel like you have to adhere to a super clean diet, you can really benefit from getting into calories and macros, because now you can understand, okay, if I really want to have the grandma's cookies and I know how much they're taking up in my day, I can plan this in and work the rest of my day around it. In fact, what I typically would do is if I'm having a super calorie dense thing like this, I'm going to think about bumping up the volume, and my meal before it is probably going to be something higher in protein and vegetables. That's going to give me a lot of nutrients, keep my belly full so that I will be full on a small serving of that. In fact, I was going to even record an episode on like GLP-1 medications now that are being used for weight loss. It's funny because the only reason why GLP-1 drugs work is because they impact your appetite. And I'm just going to make a little tangent on this. And one of the biggest things I hear when I put somebody on a high protein, high fiber diet is, I'm just not hungry. That's exactly what the GLP-1 medications do. That exact same effect is what they're doing. It's just in a shot. So you can eat your protein and fiber and save yourself the money, or you can spend the money. Okay. By the way, oftentimes on these drugs, women are not getting it, well, and men too, are not getting enough protein, and they end up losing muscle. We're going to save all that for another episode, though. But I do like the fact that calories and macros brought flexibility into the mix. So going back to my own journey, and I mentioned I've had a lot of ebb and flows in my own nutrition. I went from like focusing on food quality to then I was tracking calories and eating clean. To then I went completely into the other end of the spectrum. And I will say I kind of reverted back to a more processed diet. But this is because I was in a really, really bad place with my own fitness journey. I had developed an eating disorder. And I had went from eating like 300 calories a day and starving myself at 83 pounds to like, oh my God, am I ever going to like be normal again? And I was binging. So, that was a really tough time in my life, and I can actually do another episode on that. Actually, I haven't talked about that in a while, and I probably should. But anyways, so I went from that, and then I went to getting back into kind of finding balance between the two. And then I went into paleo, which was all food quality, and I'm like, oh, I don't have to track calories and macros, and I can just focus on eating good foods. But I gained like 35 pounds. I gained like 35 pounds back because I was eating a shit ton of like nuts and dates and dried fruit. And I would eat like 4 eggs for breakfast. Like, I was eating way too many calories. So, and then I kind of found what I think works for me. And I would demonize foods like this. I would not let myself have, and I honestly to this day don't even think I would eat Doritos. I think I had this for my nephew actually. But I think that, I kind of found a place where I could feel good about having whatever I wanted, but knowing that as long as I was eating mostly good quality foods, nothing bad was going to happen. And it also removed the fear that like eating those foods, what was causing me to gain weight. It was like, okay, Cheryl, you haven't been eating these foods. You've been eating healthy foods and you're gaining weight. So obviously it's not the foods. So, and now I'm in a place where I feel like I have balance. And the final thing that I want to end on today, and why I talked about why food quality is so important. Okay. I personally track my calories and macros. I could just keep going. This just sparked another thought in my head. Um, so many people think that tracking calories and macros is just for fat loss. Like, unless I want to lose weight, I shouldn't have to do that. Okay. But as I mentioned, you can be eating clean and under eating. And that's a huge problem. Under eating, in fact, is often more detrimental to your health than overeating, because there's a lot of other things that go wrong with that. So if you're somebody though that doesn't want to track your calories and macros forever, um, having good quality food is going to help make that transition a lot easier. Okay. And once you've tracked calories and macros of foods that you want to be able to enjoy, like the Doritos, like a piece of cake, you build awareness around portion sizes of those things so that when you're not tracking, you kind of know how to be intuitively where you need to be to keep your calories under control. And as I mentioned, like optimizing your calories and macros for maintenance to feel your best is also a really good, important thing to do. In fact, it's how all of my clients start and all of my clients end, because at the end of the day, one of the reasons why most people regain weight is because they are chronically trying to live on too little, whether it's too restrictive in their food choices or they're too restrictive in their calorie intake. So I'm going to pop over to the questions and comments to see if anybody has anything else. Interesting what happened to you on paleo. I did it for 2.5 years and lost 20 pounds, but the cholesterol went up. Yeah. So yeah, Lee. So definitely, I think it depends on lifestyle. So one of the things I was dealing with, Lee, is I was training as a very high level athlete at the time, and I was not eating any carb. I wasn't eating enough carbohydrates. There's only so much sweet potato that you can eat, and I wasn't eating a lot of things like honey and really dense carb sources. And I was under eating, and it would cause me to overeat. So I also have a client right now, like I mentioned, she just started with me and she was eating all natural foods, um, and all natural fats. And she's like, I can't lose weight. And I'm like, well, that's because you're eating, most of your calories are just fat. And here's the funny thing about this is people that talk about like specific dietary protocols like keto or whatnot. She's like, I don't eat sugar. I don't eat anything processed. But then when we were talking about, making changes to her fat intake, and she's like, well, I get a sweet craving and I normally have these keto treats. And I'm like, okay, you don't eat any sugar, you don't eat any carbs because you don't eat processed food, but you're replacing it with something else to make you get that. Like, obviously, you really want the real thing. And that's where it's like, your body's craving something and it's understanding how to feed it the right way. So like replacing it, if you're really craving a cookie, sometimes you should have the cookie. So not all the time. Oh, it was keto. Paleo was another era of my life. Yes, keto is definitely, I would not recommend, guys, can we just say I would not recommend diets. If you want a diet for you, the best diet for you is the one that you build yourself. My goal with all of my clients is to get them to build a diet that they can stick to. And that comes down to incorporating foods that they're actually going to enjoy and obviously making sure they're getting enough nutrients. So that's so important. Anybody else have any questions on nutrition, training, anything else that I didn't touch on today that you guys want me to touch on more of? I've been loving doing these live on Instagram too, by the way. So if you're watching these on Instagram and you do like them, please let me know because I'll do them more often. I just don't want to like obviously bore you guys because I could literally talk about nutrition all day. It's like definitely passion for me. I guess it's why it's my career. Any other questions? All right, so just to wrap it up, since we're pretty much finished up here, unless anything else pops up, I'm going to look on YouTube as well. Oh, I have a comment here. What are your thoughts about the new fad about peptides? Peptides. Okay, well, the GLP-1 is a peptide. I had a question about peptides. Peptides are newer, and I think it's definitely one of those things where you want to experiment. I did try BPC 157, which is a peptide that's supposed to help with gastric stuff, but more so for injury healing. I did try it with my ankle, and it didn't really do anything for me. Like being 100% honest, I did get a good quality source. I don't think it was like a bad source or anything like that. I just don't think I felt anything different. Some people swear by them for recovery. So I just think it's honestly, it very well could be placebo. They are relatively expensive. So I would just, weigh out like, okay, have I tried everything else before investing in something like that? That would be my suggestion there. And there's different ones for different reasons as well. So I think it's really specific to what your overall needs are from the peptides. But that was a good question. Flex the 4-pack. Are you telling me I only have a 4-pack, Ash? I think I have more than a 4-pack. Or you want my 4? Like I don't know. I'm not flexing on social media. I'm half naked almost every single day on social media when I'm working out. So I'm not gonna flex right now. So we'll save that for another episode. Any other questions before I wrap it up? All right. Well, here's what I'm going to wrap it up on. Clean eating versus calories and macros. You need them both. It's not this versus that. Okay. If it fits your macros and you're eating nothing but shit food, you're going to be missing out on a lot of the nutrients that you're going to be getting from the clean eating club. And if you're a clean eater and you're not balancing out your calories and macros, you're going to stay stuck. If you're looking to change your body composition, if you're looking to improve your performance, if you're looking to, lose a lot of weight, it really does come down to understanding the importance of calories and macronutrient balance. But the clean eating part of it makes that a lot easier. Okay. So that's what I'm going to end on. If you guys have any questions, any topics that you guys want on Instagram or YouTube or anything or Facebook, please feel free to shoot me a DM. I would love to obviously be able to have some more direction on what you guys are looking to get more information on, because I love teaching. It's my favorite part of what I do. And I know it's probably boring for a lot of people. I think a lot of people are like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And that can work for some people, but I want to be able to help provide you the understanding of why what you're doing works. Because I'm going to buy into something when I understand the science behind it. And that's really what I like to teach. So I'm going to pop over one more time on Facebook. All right. Well, until the next episode, if you guys have any other questions, you know where to find me. I'll talk to you guys all soon.